What kind of darkness lurks beneath the surface of those we think we know? What twisted obsession drives someone to betray not just love, but innocence itself? What drives a person to cross the line from love to lethal obsession? How does a friend transform into a predator lurking in plain sight? This story unravels a tangled web of betrayal, manipulation, and unrelenting jealousy that shattered a family, and left investigators racing to untangle the lies before the killer could vanish into the shadows. But this wasn't just a crime of rage. This was personal. Planned. Executed with chilling precision. And the person responsible? Someone trusted, someone they let inside their lives. Stay with us as we uncover the shocking case of a mother and her two daughters murdered in their home, by the husband's lover. David Johnson, Sarah Johnson and her daughters, Emily and Lily, seemed to have the perfect life. But appearances can be deceiving. It was an ordinary Wednesday morning of June 2, 2021, in Cedar Grove, Texas, when neighbors noticed something was terribly wrong at the Johnson household. And then a chilling 911 call from David Johnson, claiming he found his wife and daughters unresponsive and covered in blood, defensive wounds, overturned furniture, and eerie silence. The police arrived at the crime scene drenched in chaos, a shattered glass door, overturned furniture, and bloodstains that painted a picture of sheer brutality. At first glance, it looked like a robbery gone horribly wrong. But something felt off. The violence was too personal, too deliberate. Detectives quickly realized that the signs of forced entry weren't evidence of a break-in, they were a performance. Staged. Crafted to mislead. As investigators dug deeper, the facade of a random burglary began to crumble. What they uncovered instead was a chilling web of lies, betrayal, and manipulation, threads that wove together a sinister plot designed to destroy a family from the inside out. But this wasn't just about murder. It was about obsession. A dangerous fixation that blurred the line between love and control, pushing the suspects to cross boundaries they could never return from. And as the investigation unraveled, the truth revealed something far darker than anyone could have imagined, because the real threat wasn't a stranger in the night. It was someone they trusted. Someone who had been hiding in plain sight all along. David Johnson was brought in for questioning about his whereabouts during the time of the murders. He quickly presented an alibi, Jacob Reynolds, not just a co-worker, but his longtime best friend and trusted confidant. At first, Jacob appeared to be a cooperative witness, vouching for David without hesitation. But as investigators began peeling back the layers of the case, cracks in Jacob's story started to emerge. What initially seemed like unwavering loyalty soon raised suspicions of something far more troubling, a man caught between friendship and truth, whose silence may have played a critical role in covering up a chilling and calculated crime. On the night of the murders, David Johnson insisted he had been at Jacob Reynolds' apartment, watching a late-night basketball game. Jacob immediately corroborated the story, providing time-stamped text messages and surveillance footage that appeared to show David entering and leaving the building. At first, their alibi seemed airtight, a seamless narrative between two close friends. But as investigators scrutinized the details, inconsistencies began to surface, raising unsettling questions about whether Jacob's loyalty had crossed the line into complicity. However, discrepancies in their timeline began to surface, investigators pulled phone records, and a disturbing detail emerged: calls and texts had been sent from David's phone to Rachel Matthews during the time he was supposedly with Jacob. The surveillance footage Jacob provided, meant to solidify David's alibi, raised even more questions. Blurry and inconclusive, it hinted at possible tampering rather than proof of innocence. As detectives pressed Jacob for answers, his nervous demeanor and shifting statements only deepened their suspicions. Was he protecting a friend, or was he covering up a calculated crime? The cracks in Jacob's story were growing, and so was the sense that something far more sinister lay beneath the surface. In the days leading up to the murders, witnesses reported seeing Jacob and David locked in a tense argument at a local bar. The confrontation hinted at growing unease, suggesting Jacob may have harbored doubts about the plan but chose to remain silent, bound by loyalty or fear of betrayal. Jacob's breaking point came when detectives laid out irrefutable phone records and financial evidence, linking him to a Rachel Matthew in ways he couldn't deny. The walls closing in, he cracked. With shaky hands and a voice laced with regret, he confessed that David had shared his affair with Rachel and his growing frustrations with Sarah. But Jacob never imagined it would spiral into murder. He claimed his lies were meant to protect a friend, but when pressed, he vehemently denied any direct involvement in the killings. His confession painted him as a man caught in a web of guilt and fear, someone who knew far too much, yet lacked the spine to expose the truth. His every word dripped with the tension of a reluctant accomplice, desperate to distance himself from the horror unfolding around him. The phone records and financial records was what pointed Rachel Matthews, a 32 years old with a history of erratic behavior, as also a suspect in the case. Rachel wasn't just a casual acquaintance of the Johnson family, she was Sarah Johnson's close friend and confidant. But as investigators began to dig deeper, Rachel's seemingly innocent role in their lives took a much darker, more sinister turn. Rachel had been a fixture in the Johnson family's life for nearly 5 years. She had attended countless family gatherings, babysat the daughters, and even confided in Sarah about her personal struggles. Sarah, ever the empathetic friend, took Rachel under her wing, offering her support and encouragement through every hardship. But Rachel's presence had started to weigh heavily on Sarah's life in ways she couldn't have imagined. Little did Sarah know, Rachel had been playing a much deeper game all along. When questioned, Rachel initially denied any romantic involvement. However, deleted text messages recovered from David's phone painted a different story, messages filled with jealousy, desperation, and even hints at eliminating obstacles to their relationship. As the investigation unfolded, the picture of Rachel's true nature began to take shape. Beneath the veneer of friendship lay a web of manipulation, obsession, and deceit. Rachel's bond with Sarah had slowly morphed into something more insidious. There were moments when Rachel would subtly undermine Sarah, planting seeds of doubt about her marriage, as though testing Sarah's vulnerabilities. At family gatherings, Rachel would linger too close to David, her laughter too bright, her gaze too intense. Witnesses later revealed chilling details. Rachel had openly flirted with David at social events, her behavior so bold it sent ripples of discomfort through those around them. But it wasn't just flirtation, it was a calculated move to weaken the trust between Sarah and David, to create a rift where none had existed. And late-night office visits, which Sarah had assumed were for work, were nothing more than clandestine meetings between Rachel and David, meetings that would later be revealed to have gone far beyond professional discussions. The psychological toll on Sarah was gradual but devastating. Friends who had known Sarah for years noticed subtle changes. She became anxious, second-guessed her intuition, and began to question her marriage. Rachel, once a trusted confidant, had unknowingly begun to sow the seeds of self-doubt in Sarah's mind, manipulating her emotions with carefully crafted words. What was once a safe, loving home was now rife with tension. But Sarah was unaware of the true threat lurking within her own circle. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that Rachel had carefully studied Sarah's weaknesses, understanding her empathetic nature and using it to her advantage. She knew Sarah's greatest fear, losing her family. And Rachel, having sensed that fear, had used it to fuel a devastating obsession with David. What had begun as flirtation turned into a dangerous infatuation, a fixation so consuming that Rachel was willing to tear apart everything Sarah had worked so hard to build. Hidden deep within Rachel's personal files was a dark, haunting collection of research that would unravel the truth of her twisted intentions. Among her notes were detailed articles and online searches on undetectable crimes, with particular focus on perfecting methods of murder that would leave no trace behind. It was clear that Rachel's obsession with David had crossed a terrifying threshold, evolving into something far more sinister than anyone could have anticipated. Rachel had even gone so far as to write in her private journal, detailing her feelings of resentment toward Sarah and her growing desire to replace her in David's life. There were passages about the overwhelming need for control, about erasing the woman she viewed as an obstacle to her happiness. And, disturbingly, the deeper she delved into her fantasies of a life with David, the more detached Rachel became from any sense of morality. She wasn't just planning a crime, she was constructing a narrative in which she deserved to have everything Sarah had, no matter the cost. The chilling reality began to settle in when investigators uncovered a series of disturbing online purchases Rachel had made in the weeks leading up to the murders. Items that seemed innocuous at first, gloves, duct tape, and knives, were anything but. They were tools for a meticulously planned act, each piece part of a puzzle that was beginning to fit together in the most horrifying way. The discovery of her purchases only deepened the horror. The duct tape, often associated with kidnapping and restraint, was chilling in its implications. The knives, blunt and sinister, suggested violence was on her mind far more than anyone could have guessed. And the gloves, latex, tight-fitting, and practically invisible, told a story of someone planning to leave no fingerprints, no DNA, nothing that could tie her to the crime. But then, just when the investigation seemed to be unraveling, a chilling new twist emerged. Weeks before the murder, neighbors had overheard heated arguments between Sarah and David, their voices rising in a way that left an unsettling tension hanging in the air. Those who knew Sarah best couldn't shake the feeling that something darker was unfolding behind closed doors. It had all started when Sarah filed for divorce, citing not only David's infidelity but also her growing fear for her own safety. "He's not the man I married anymore," she confided in close friends, her voice trembling with a mix of betrayal and fear. But it didn't end there. Sarah had begun receiving anonymous, threatening messages that hinted at something far more sinister lurking in the shadows. With each passing day, her anxiety deepened. She began to live in a state of constant vigilance, feeling as though she were being watched, her every move calculated. But none of it seemed to stop the inevitable. Those close to her are now haunted by the chilling thought: was Sarah's death the ultimate act of revenge, or was there a much darker plan at play? The case took a chilling turn when detectives made a breakthrough that shattered the carefully constructed facade of innocence. Hidden within deleted emails and text messages, they uncovered a dark, damning conversation between David and his mistress, Rachel. Their words, cold and calculated, revealed a horrifying plan, one to start over, and, more disturbingly, to get rid of the problem. The implications were chilling, suggesting that Sarah was not just a victim of a volatile relationship, but a pawn in a sinister plot driven by betrayal and greed. But the evidence didn't stop there. Under Sarah's fingernails, a discovery was made that sent shockwaves through the investigation: Rachel's DNA. It was as though Sarah had fought desperately for her life, clawing at the very person who had once been her friend. The scene painted a haunting picture of a struggle, a final, frantic attempt to survive. Then, the final piece fell into place. Security footage placed Rachel's car near the house just hours before Sarah's murder, a detail that seemed to confirm the worst fears of the investigators. The closer they looked, the more it became clear: Rachel wasn't just an accomplice, she was an active participant in the deadly conspiracy. As the pieces of the puzzle snapped together, the chilling realization set in: Sarah and her daughter's deaths wasn't just the tragic end of a tumultuous relationship, but a premeditated, cold-blooded act fueled by jealousy, rage, and a thirst for control. The truth, once obscured by lies, was now horrifyingly undeniable. Rachel's confession, soft and tremulous, sent shockwaves through the room as she admitted, in broken whispers, that she had been manipulated by David into carrying out the murders. Her eyes darted nervously, the weight of her guilt evident in her trembling hands. "He promised me we'd be together," Rachel sobbed, her voice trembling as she recounted how David had promised a future with her, one free of Sarah and her daughters. She described how he had skillfully twisted her emotions, playing on her insecurities and desires, until she believed the only way to secure their happiness was through the brutal, heartless murder of Sarah and the girls. Was Rachel telling the truth, or was she simply covering for him, hoping to shift the blame to the man who had manipulated her every step of the way. Was she truly been a victim, or was she the final piece in a more calculated, twisted plan? The truth was no longer clear-cut, it was a puzzle, with each new revelation adding more layers to an already complex, disturbing narrative. For lovers of true crime, it was a case that explored not only the darkness of the crime itself, but the manipulative dance between predator and prey, and the chilling possibilities of what truly lay behind Rachel's confession. Jacob, in a last-ditch attempt to escape further legal ramifications, struck a plea deal that spared him prison time, receiving only 3 years of probation and mandatory counseling for obstruction of justice. But the deal came at a heavy cost. His reputation, once intact, was now irreparably tarnished. The town that had once known him as a respectable figure turned its back, and Jacob, shunned and ostracized, packed up his life and disappeared, slipping into the shadows of anonymity, living under the radar far from the public eye. Rachel, on the other hand, faced the full weight of her actions. With a chilling admission, she pled guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder. The court's decision was swift and unyielding, life without the possibility of parole. Her future, once filled with promises and illusions, was now as bleak and unforgiving as the crime she had committed. David, ever the stoic manipulator, insisted on his innocence to the bitter end. His defense was built on lies and denials, but the mountain of evidence against him was insurmountable: digital footprints, damning messages, and the chilling confession of his accomplice, Rachel. The jury saw through his veneer, and with a unanimous verdict, David was convicted of all charges. The sentence was equally unforgiving: death by lethal injection. 3 innocent lives lost to jealousy and betrayal. But was justice truly served? Was Rachel manipulated into committing murder, or was she just as guilty as David? Did she act alone, or was David the true mastermind, pulling the strings from the shadows? Could authorities have prevented this tragedy if Sarah's earlier fears had been taken more seriously? Was David the puppet master, or was Rachel a willing accomplice in a plot driven by obsession? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, could the system have done more to protect Sarah and her daughters, before it was too late? The case may be closed, but the wounds remain, deep, unresolved, and far-reaching. A shattered community, a family torn apart, and the chilling truth of what happens when manipulation and betrayal go unchecked. The aftermath of this tragedy will haunt everyone involved for years to come. So, what do you think? Was justice truly served, or was there more lurking beneath the surface? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe for more shocking true crime cases, and hit the bell so you never miss an update. Like and share this video to spread awareness about hidden dangers in toxic relationships.